Hi, everyone. As the pilot training industry is going through some challenging times, we at aviationfly.com are doing an interview series with the leadership of pilot training organizations around the globe. To learn more about the organizations, how they're dealing with the current situation, and what their future outlook is. All the interviews are being posted on LinkedIn, and you can find other interviews on my profile if you click on Activity and Posts. Today, I have the pleasure to speak with Vincent Ong, President and owner of Airworks Aviation Academy, one of the largest pilot training academies in the Philippines, training both Filipino and international students, with a fleet of over 21 training aircraft. Hi, Vincent. Thank you for sharing your
Hi,
insights.
Max.
Please tell us
Yeah.
more about your organization.
Well, our organization, Airworks Aviation Academy, has basically been in this business for 27 years. We're based out of a Class B airport called Mactan International Airport. We're, I think, the biggest international flight school in the Philippines. We have students from 30 different countries. Like you mentioned, we have a fleet size of 21. We've ordered 2 more aircraft to support the growth in the training market. We do have this year we've also expanded our student housing facilities. So we're quite bullish about the training industry in the long term and medium term.
Okay, thank you, Vincent. I'm quite curious because I know some stuff about Airworks already. I know you're definitely one of the leading schools in the Philippines when it comes to training international students, so people from all over the region. Can you just give us a bit more of an understanding, kind of the countries that you've trained students from?
The majority of our foreign students would come from ASEAN countries in South Asia, then a bit on Middle East, North Africa. But I'd say in recent years, it's mainly Southeast Asia and South Asia.
Okay, okay. And so how long have you been training Filipino and international students?
27 years. Our school was founded 1993. So
Okay.
it's 27 years this year. And we're
Fantastic.
proud of our, excellent track record, not just in the graduates, but also in the field of safety. So because those are important matters to students that they ask when choosing a flight school.
Okay, okay. If I'm not mistaken, also Airworks Aviation Academy is also has also special partnerships with airlines in the Philippines. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do not just a partnership with airlines in the Philippines, but also in South Asia, as I mentioned, and even Afghanistan. As far as Afghanistan, we placed the first female airline pilot there, international airline, through
Okay,
a
okay.
cadet program. So it's not yet very big. It's something we want to grow in the future, but it's definitely not the first time dealing with airlines.
Okay, okay. Well, based on what I know, Airworks supplies both airlines in the Philippines and internationally. So just before this whole kind of COVID situations, um, Airworks, based on my understanding and what I've seen in the news and what I know about the training platform, has seen growing demand by airlines for pilot graduates and has also seen growing enrollment numbers over the past 2 years. So just before this whole COVID situation has really affected everyone globally, um, could you tell us a bit more about where Airworks has been in terms of your enrollment numbers looking in regards to your historical enrollment numbers?
Actually, if you talk about the past 5-7 years, it's been really growing year on year robustly. And specific to 2020, it was headed to another banner year, considering 2019 was a new banner year for us. But 2020 alone, the first 2 months and 3 months in enrollment was even much, much higher, like the last year, easily about 35% higher. And, revenues also much higher. Bottom line, we were headed to another banner year before this whole COVID thing stopped us, and largely it was in support of the what the government wanted. But bottom line, if the government didn't institute a flight ban, the students wouldn't have stopped flying.
Yes.
So they were that committed, and yeah, you could say we didn't see this coming because we were confident that, since COVID is not that much of an issue where we're located from. But yes, once the government came up with a blanket ban, that's when things really started changing, and embassies started calling their students. The students were initially skeptical. No, we just want to hang out here. This is gonna, if it's gone in a month, we'd rather stay here. But world leaders got panicky and started sending their own chartered flights, Boeing 777s, Airbus 350s to our airport, and then so they just sort of obeyed their embassies and went home. But otherwise, they were all good.
Okay. So I think for everyone watching to understand, so you're located at on the island of Cebu in the Philippines, which is a leading international airport, and also which is surrounded by beautiful beaches. I think it must be one of the most beautiful places in the world to do your pilot training at. So I do understand why some students most probably indicated their interest to stay at Airworks, even though the embassies encouraged them to travel back to their home country. So what you were saying just now is essentially that in the Philippines, the government has come out and has said all flight schools have to stop operating. How long is this ban for?
I think we can't tell for sure. It depends on the COVID-19 stats that the government is monitoring. But I'm hoping we could restart sometime May, if not June.
Okay.
But that's as far as my crystal ball can see.
Okay.
But I'm hoping not very long because people want to work, people want to get back to their normal lifestyle. So
Okay, and I think also for everyone watching to understand, so actually the Philippines until now has reported a very low number of cases. Most of these cases are actually in the capital city, Manila, because the government has also been very strict in terms of introducing a lockdown. The country was already quite familiar with wearing face masks due to a volcanic eruption next to the capital city earlier in the year. So, but at the same time, also we have to see how many tests are happening in the Philippines. So, okay, so you're expecting, or you think that operations will start again most probably in May or June. Have you, based on what has happened now, have you implemented any new policies within your organization? Are you looking at certain things now which you weren't considering before?
yep. Before we were shut down, we were already implementing stricter policies. So we had hand sanitizers all around, temperature checks. But now that we've shut down, we're definitely looking at starting an online class sometime April, because we had a solid March batch that we couldn't start because of the ban. So now these guys are already signed up but are just waiting. So we think the best way to I know the throughput is already disrupted, but if we were to smoothen the throughput, we should start ground class online sometime April. So at least by the time the school reopens, they'll be done with their ground class.
Okay.
So the disruption wouldn't be as bad rather than if we just waited for the school to reopen.
Yeah, fully understand. Okay, well, really thank you for sharing your insights. And what do you think, what is your kind of future outlook for Airworks Aviation Academy, for the Philippines and for the region in terms of pilot training and the demand for pilots, both from the airline industry and from the general aviation industry?
I think moving forward, I still think see a very bright future. It's just that it will take time because, like you said, from the moment the government lifts the ban, then I'm looking at another lag of a couple of months before the various governments lift their bilateral bans before students can come in. But my outlook is at some point this year, it will come back to the levels that we started the year. Why? Because these students are already enrolled, so they wouldn't want their training to be delayed. Second, the other bigger trend I'm seeing in the aviation world post-COVID will definitely be government partnerships with airlines. I call it renationalizing airlines in almost all countries, because in almost all countries, airlines are being bailed out or government are taking equity positions. So for me, there's a good side to it because, as you can see in any crisis, aviation is an industry imbued with public interest. You can't just leave it out, because in emergencies, then how then will you ferry, all these medical gears? So I think there's a good side to that because a significant portion of our foreign students are financed by their government. So if the government steps up even more, I think it will help the students also financially. And like I said, not everyone is happy with government involvement in private sector, but I think this is one industry that government really needs to step in. And it will, to me, with the government being active, to me, the recovery will be faster because then the airlines can just, reboot and start flying. And further down the supply chain, like I said, with our markets, significant markets having government finance students, then it should benefit us.
Okay. And I think what I also find so amazing about Southeast Asia is how much in demand or how good the reputation is of the pilot profession. So uh, compared to some other regions of the world, the pilot profession, especially in the Philippines and while also in some neighboring countries, is still seen as one of the top professions that people can go into. And especially when I look at Airworks, it's amazing to see how Airworks has on Facebook over 120,000 followers, which are highly engaging with the page. So I think also based on my insights, this base demand is going to come back quite strong as soon as countries get the situation under control.
Yeah, definitely, because in every worldwide disaster, there will be heroes. In this thing, I think the heroes are rightly so the frontliners, the medical profession. But after that, I think that the young people out there are looking at pilots who's keeping the supply chain of this medicine, testing kits, flowing through around the world despite all the difficulties and despite of all the risks. So there's also a hero halo after COVID-19 that extends to the flying industry. Because now people see, because before, air cargo was invisible to them. All to them is just, for them, airline is just tourism, going to Instagram-worthy destinations in all glamour that. But now they see that the heavy lifting around the world, when push comes to shove, happens in the aviation industry. It's all these air cargos are flying around the world. So as I've seen it in major local disasters and major worldwide disasters, there's always going to be added bump in interest because they see the crucial role that aviation plays in every major disasters around the world.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. So coming out of COVID-19, are there any specific stakeholders that you would like to connect with, that Airworks Aviation Academy would like to connect with?
I definitely like to connect with, airlines with we're considering cadet programs around the world. Maybe they can cast a wider net now that these are trying times. Maybe they could look at the advantages of training with us or in the Philippines from a proximity standpoint, and the inherent advantages of being able really to teach English really well. So there's so many things that they may have overlooked just before, just sending to default countries. We're hoping that the airlines will take a keener look at other options, and hopefully when they do consider that, they'd consider us. So those are definitely stakeholders we want to connect. And that's why even in this COVID-19 pause, we're still continuing the construction of our expanded student housing, because we know if we get to add some more airline cadet programs, they also demand housing. So we're preparing for that.
Okay,
And
fantastic.
definitely some vendors as well of next generation aircraft. That's something we want to look at as well.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for your insights, Vincent. We will also aim to support you as much as possible through all the resources that we currently have deployed. And let's hope that everything in the Philippines works out quite quickly, and that you can continue training Filipino and international students from one of the most beautiful pilot training destinations in the world, which is Cebu Island in the south of the Philippines.
Thank you, Max. Like our ad campaign early last year, it's Learn to Fly in Paradise.
Learn to fly in paradise. All right, Vincent, thank you very much.
Thank you, Max.